I'm very honest with you, I struggled with applying the hero frame to the work that I do. And I feel a certain kind of way about saying that in a room full of heroes. And because my truth as a change maker is that change doesn't happen with one single event, one single human doing one thing. Change happens when we build intentional communities. It happens when we work with folks who are impacted by the criminal justice system, who feel harm, and those are the folks who should be leading our movements. And so when I think about the hero and that journey, it feels like it doesn't quite fit. So here I am, like working through in my head, thinking about what heroism looks like for social justice. Adrienne Maree Brown, in a book called Emergent Strategy, talks about how change is organic, it is emergent, it is relational. And when I sit with this, I think about the word organic, and I understand that each one of us, you and I, sit on the precipice of change, and we each have a very different perspective on what that change looks like. And we each have our own unique entree to change. Well, let me be clear. Individual acts of heroism and courage are real moments in our journey for change. They are mile markers, but they are singular events that stand on the top of generations of resistors and activists, many of whose names we will never, ever know. And while those individual acts are important, it's only one small piece. I've spent a lot of my career working against oppressive governments and trying to get oppressive governments to stop doing terrible things. Most recently, as Matt said, I've spent a lot of my career trying to end the death penalty in the United States. What that often means is I spend a lot of time in basements, church basements, community center basements, household basements, state legislative basements. And in those basements, you see all of the pieces and all of the people who make up part of this world. And we see all of the people who contribute to the change that we make. I've learned from movement elders that the movement, capital M movement, it is before us and it is after us. And our responsibility as change makers is to make sure that we do no harm. It's to make sure that we pay extra careful attention to the unintended consequences that come with the change that we seek to make and achieve. And to do that, that means that we cannot act as singular individuals. We must act in concert with one another. And that is where we see lasting change. And that's the kind of work that I have been focusing on, because I believe that in order to make this world a better place, the only way to do it is if we work intentionally for change that will last for a long time. So today, I want to tell you the story about one state that I've worked in. In 2013, we ended the death penalty in Maryland. The work to end the death penalty, let me back up. I'm going to tell you about the story of ending what I call the modern death penalty in Maryland. And I use the word modern for two particular reasons. One is that my work to end the death penalty stands on the shoulders of great abolitionists like Ida B. Wells and Angelina Grimke. And the second reason is that for a very short time in the United States, there was no death penalty. Very short, in the 70s. Maryland reinstated its death penalty in 1978. So my story sits at that moment from once Maryland reinstated the death penalty. I came to Maryland to start working on the campaign in 1998. That means that there had been 20 years of organizing in front of me before I got there. And in those 20 years, the state started executing again. Advocates won after several years of failing, bills to end the death penalty for juveniles, end the death penalty for intellectually disabled. Kirk Bloodsworth, a dear friend of mine, was released from Maryland's death row after spending 9 years there for a crime he did not commit. And his story really rocked. the Maryland world. But if you remember, for those of you who remember the 90s, it was a very tough on crime world. And a quick touch of someone like Kirk Bloodsworth was a thing that started really opening the moment for change. And it gave us an opportunity to start talking in a different way about the death penalty. And it gave us an opportunity and a hook to talk about the way in which the state failed. And that was a very critical moment. When I entered the death penalty movement, at the time, our campaign goal was for only a moratorium, just a small little respite, so that the state would stop killing its citizens, so that we could actually take some time and figure out, why were we getting it so wrong? Why is our death penalty killing more people of color? Why is our death penalty applied in the most unfair way? We, of course, had our end goal as to end it, but we felt that if we were able to unearth these bits, we might be able to identify the humanity in individual people and share that with our policymakers who are going to make that decision. So here we are, 20 years into trying to end the death penalty in Maryland, and we're just trying to get a moratorium. For 3 years, we had some pretty bitter losses, and in Maryland, that means that our bill never saw the light of day. What happened to it is that it was, quote, put in a drawer, which means that a legislator was able to make a choice. One legislator was able to make a choice that our bill would never be heard. Finally, in 2001, a House committee voted to support a moratorium on the death penalty, but our bill died. It died in committee. And I tell you about that because at the moment, we had not had a victory for almost 10 years. And that small moment when we passed in committee, even though we didn't win, was a moment that buoyed our work. And it was a moment that reminded us that maybe, just maybe, we could make a little tiny break in the system. And this is the moment where I started to understand that for those of us who are making change, we lose a lot before we win. And that's hard. And that constant persistence that is required to actually win and make change, that might be the heroic work that I'm looking for. That might be the heroism in this situation, that there are folks for 35 years who are willing to come back again and again and again and endure all of those losses just for a singular goal. So here we are, it's 2001. We've been losing for, 28 years? It's frustrating. And then we have a governor. We managed to convince the governor to put a moratorium on executions. We thought Governor Glendening maybe was our hero. He left office in 6 months, and our brand new governor, in one of his first acts, what he did was took away the moratorium, which was a great lesson on how fickle executive power is, on how fickle, when only one person takes an act, that result is. It went away so fast. We had a short-lived victory, a moment that was so sweet, that rush of a win. But again, it buoyed us. You remember a time that you won? Think for a minute about a moment that you won. Is your heart beating fast when you remember that? Us too. It keeps us going. And those wins are the stories that we tell each other to keep going on. So we're back again. Our governor has lifted our moratorium, and we continue to keep fighting. Finally, in 2007, we get a governor who is willing to end the death penalty. He's willing to use his political power to push it forward. And he testifies for our repeal bill, which is a big coup. We died in committee. It was very sad. The governor put out political capital for us, and he got nothing for it, which means we have to do damage control on this side. The next year, we readjusted our strategy, and we asked for a legislative study on the death penalty, which we won. Sometimes it's easier for a policymaker to say, okay, fine, we'll talk about it a little bit more, right? It's easy to talk about things. That legislative study came back and recommended repeal the death penalty. For the first time, we felt like we had something to stand on. The legislature, a legislative body itself, recommended a policy that we wanted to have happen. So we roll into the legislative session, buoyed by our victory. Everybody expects us to win. The papers were talking about it. It seemed like it was going to happen, and we made it all the way through the end, up until the moment when we were on the Senate floor and we got beat. It was a crushing procedural defeat. And we got beat because our opponents knew better the rules, and they knew better the political levers to pull. And it was a hard, hard lesson. So we had to go back. For the next 3 years, despite having an active and even well-funded campaign, which is unusual in our movement, a friendly governor, a plurality of votes on the floor, we lost in committee for 3 years running. And the reason we lost is because the death penalty and other social change issues are hard votes for a legislator to take. And unless we, the people, spend our energy showing our policymakers that it is not in their interest to ignore the vote, change will not happen. So we went back the next year. Finally, after 3 years of losses, we went back and we won. But the reason that we won wasn't because we were here on our fourth time. We won because we stood on the shoulders of 35 years of activism, 35 years of intentional building with folks who were impacted by the criminal justice system, folks who had been harmed by the way in which the death penalty had impacted their lives. And we built a community of folks willing to bring their humanity to the table and willing to demand change from legislators. And that happened. That took 35 years, and that took days and hours, thousands of hours of working in our community. And that's why we won. And so what I take from this is, as I said before, you have to lose a lot before you win, and you have to be willing to lose, and you have to be willing to interrogate every single loss and to find out why, and ask why, what it is that you can do next. So, thank you.
The Hero Roundtables are the global events that ask the question, what is a hero? You've just seen one hero talk. To find more and join the conversation, visit our website or social media.